Hey guys, welcome back to Intuitive Angling, and appreciate you guys checking out today's video and hanging out with me a little bit. And guys, today we're going to be talking about summertime chatterbait or bladed jig fishing, which is a completely different ball game from any other time of the year. It's like if you're on YouTube, it's just completely chock full of chatterbait and fluke type videos, especially chatterbait. And a lot of people fish a chatterbait in the springtime of the year, and it's an excellent bait. But the way that you fish a chatterbait and the conditions and the colors are completely different than summertime fishing. So I'm gonna give you guys some tips and advice on catching them all through the summer on it, and sort of explain to you guys why is there a transition and why bass need to have a different presentation in the summertime. So we're gonna dig into that in today's episode here. And also guys, I'll put my chatterbait link and chatterbait and all my bladed jig links in my tackle warehouse link in the description of this video. If you guys would like to get stocked up on some bladed jigs, using my tackle warehouse is a great way to support the channel there. I also use some of these earth shaker jigs. You can go to their website and get those. They're not in tackle warehouse, but it's a good bladed jig too. But a bunch of different ones out there, but tackle warehouse link in the description for most of them. Also guys, real quick, just a reminder, 2 more days left in the sale on my Solar Bat Series signature glasses, my RB2s and RB3s. By the end of May, guys, the sale goes off. It's done first part of June, or June 1st, it's over with. So if you guys would like to get a pair at 40% off, including prescription lenses, I'll have my Solar Bat link in the description of the video. And also if you use the promo code RandyB, you get free shipping and handling with that. So really appreciate that, guys. Thank you very much for the support of the channel and everybody that has been subscribing and liking and hyping the videos. Thank you very much for that. Okay, bladed jigs, chatterbaits, the most heavily talked about lure on YouTube for sure, and for good reason, guys. I'm gonna guess, if you take away all the forward-facing sonar stuff, all the jig head minnows, and just completely take out the forward-facing sonar component in bass fishing, I'm gonna probably put the bladed jig as the #1 most productive lure in bass fishing over the past 5 years. Not only for wins of tournaments, but high finishes. When you get in the right conditions, there's something about a bladed jig that it has a unique characteristic of catching both bigger fish and numbers of fish. So it's an outstanding lure to throw all year round. There's a lot of complexities to it, a lot of different ways to fish it, and we're just learning more about it. When we first started fishing chatterbaits back over 20 years ago, going on 25 years ago now, people thought a bladed jig was nothing except a grass lure. It's like if you weren't fishing in Florida, there was no use to even throw a bladed jig. It was considered a grass Florida lake, period. But as people fished it more, and as different colors and blade colors came out, people started incorporating it in any type of structure. And now we know that a bladed jig, it'll catch bass on any type of cover: bare rock bank, pea gravel bank, grass, wood, docks, clear water, muddy water, everywhere. And that's one of the reasons it's such a great bait, is the diversity of this particular bait and its ability to generate a reaction strike from both non-active and aggressive fish. Okay, different type of fishing in the summertime. And what I want to talk about today primarily is the areas that you want to fish a bladed jig, how you want to fish it, and the colors that's going to be different in the summertime. There's really only one color of bladed jig excuse me, that you need in the summertime of the year. We're talking about June, July, and August, and that is some type of a green pumpkin, maybe with a little bit of orange, maybe with a little bit of chartreuse on it, but primarily some type of a green pumpkin skirt with a green pumpkin type trailer on it. Now, the reason for this is because you hear me talking about this a lot in my videos about the perch bite, the perch feeders. Now, there's a lot of bass that just feed on perch all summer long because perch spawn all summer long. By the way, I always take my tail and I dye it, chartreuse, some chartreuse in the summertime. Gives it more of that perch look too. But you want the green pumpkin jig and you want a little bit of chartreuse and orange in it, simply because that's the color of the perch. I mean, most perch they got some green in them, they got some orange in them, they got some yellow in them, they maybe got some, some gold in them. It just depends. Just try to put together and try to use some type of a perch pattern skirt with either a black blade or a green pumpkin blade, something like that. This is perfect setup right here with this earth shaker. So that's the #1 thing, is they want, some type of a green pumpkin jig. The second with that, and we're gonna get into the areas in which you wanna look for here in a second, is the speed of retrieve. Now, A chatterbait, you can catch fish on it in a wide range of different retrieves, but in the summertime of the year, you're really trying to generate a reaction strike from a little bit more lethargic fish. So you got to use a faster retrieve in the summertime of the year. So this is one of the times of the year, guys, when I fish a bladed jig, I'm keeping it high in the water column, and I'm keeping that rod tip at about 10 o'clock, and I'm using like a medium fast stop and go retrieve where that bait's just really moving fast along just underneath the surface out there. I find in my own fishing that will generate more strikes than anything as far as, you know, when you're talking about warmer water temperatures. Now, the summertime fishing we're talking about with the bladed jig, pretty much relegated to water temperatures, you know, over 75 or 80 degrees. I prefer it over 80 degrees. And also with the bladed jig, in the summertime of the year, this is the time of year I hunt for the dirtiest water I can find. Different times of the year, not so much. Like if the water temperature's in the 50s, I'll catch fish on a bladed jig in 3 or 4 foot of clarity. Same with the fall time of the year. But in the summertime of the year, I want my water visibility to be a very maximum of 2 foot, preferably about 12 inches visibility, 12 inches, 2 foot at the most. So I want warm water. I want, you know, a little bit stained water. This is going to position those fish to be caught on a bladed jig this time of year. Now, there's 2 different types of structures in the summertime of the year that I fish a bladed jig on. First of all, there's a grass bite. You know, if you do have grass, it's going to be a little bit different than the hard structure I'm going to talk about. But summertime of the year is a really good time of year to fish that bladed jig over grass flats. If you have some type of grass flats, I usually like to throw it out there. I let it hit the bottom, and then I'm using this medium fast stop and go retrieve, putting my rod tip low to keep it down, just, you know, coming over the top of the grass. Really depends on how high the grass comes from the surface. But you want that bait moving across that grass pretty fast as a stop and go retrieve, just taking the top of the grass. Now that's going to be a limited situation because a lot of people don't have grass in the lakes. If you don't have grass in your lakes, which is most of us that fish out there, what you want to look for is some type of wood structure with the bladed jig. Now, in the pre-spawn, I concentrate on rock. I'll catch them just on bare rock, on riprap, on gravel banks, you know, chunk rock banks, bluff banks. They really like rock, especially when that water temperature's in the 50s and 60s. But once that water temperature starts knocking on 80, you're going to find a combination of shallow wood and stained water to be your friend. Now, what I'm looking for, if I can find it, is boat docks. Boat docks in the summertime of the year with a chatterbait is the #1 structure because in the summertime of year, again, you have a lot of perch hanging around those docks. And if you've ever walked along a boat dock, you know, it doesn't matter what type of boat dock it is, especially, you know, floating docks mainly we're talking about, is those perch will be hanging around those docks in the shade everywhere because, you know, you got all that algae and plankton growing on the floats, and the minnows are in there, you know, eating that algae and stuff. The bluegills are in there, and the bass hang out in and around those docks in the shade, you know, underneath those docks. So I want to find about 12 inches of visibility, maybe 15, and I'm going to run that chatterbait about 1 foot or 2 foot underneath that dock, just underneath the floats. And guys, if there's one in there in the summertime of the year, they'll come out and hammer that thing. And again, I want to use like a medium fast stop and go retrieve. I'm going to be casting down the sides of the boat dock, down the front. I'll be pitching it in the boat slips of it, you know, working it pretty fast. That is so good. If you have a stained water lake, especially it has floating boat docks, that's going to be a really good technique for you. Now, the other type of cover is I fish it around any type of other wood cover available in the lake. It can be a lay down tree in the water. It can be a log. It can be a stump, stick up, anything like that. Bass in shallow water in the summertime of the year, they like to be around some type of wood object. Now, again, in the springtime of the year, they favor rock more in that stained water. But in order to catch them this time of year, you really need to be around some type of rock. I mean, around some type of wood. And it doesn't even matter if the bottom is mud, because one of my favorite things to do, guys, is to run up the creeks and up the rivers to where you have the muddy, gravelly type areas, especially the mud banks. And you got these logs and stuff that have been washed down the lake when the water's high. So you'll have some logs on these flat banks with dirty water, with, you know, mud type banks on it, and running that chatterbait in and around that, you know, whatever wood cover you have in the water is a great way to generate some good strikes. it's sort of like burning a square bill crankbait around there, but it's just a different presentation. So that's my two patterns is, you know, I look for boat docks, I look for shallow wood, and then the third pattern, which you want to do sometimes, that'll work maybe occasionally a little bit better than a swim jig. I primarily use a swim jig for this, but a bladed jig will also work, is if you're concentrating purely on the bluegill spawners. So in other words, if you've got a lake where you've got some stained water, and for some reason you know there's some bluegills up shallow, like maybe you're working along the bank and you can see some perch swimming along the bank, those flat spawning type coves, you know those bass are in there looking for those bluegill. And sometimes I'll take that bladed jig in the summertime of the year and just cover like the back half of a cove, you know, where those bluegills were spawning, and trying to catch some of those bluegill eaters. But again, like I said, usually that's a bladed jig for me, maybe a topwater. Excuse me, usually that's a swim jig for me, maybe a topwater, but occasionally the bladed jig will hit them pretty good on there. And another thing is I usually use pretty heavy line in the summertime with it. I'll use 20-pound test Seaguar and Vizex. Since I'm fishing the bait shallow, you don't really need, you know, to be down very deep. Usually something either a 3/8 or half-ounce head. If it's really windy, I'll use a half-ounce. Not much wind, maybe a 3/8. But guys, it's a good way to catch them. And like I said, it's the main thing about it is get you a perch pattern. You know, best thing you can do is tie them up yourself. That way you can match the perch color. Sometimes those bluegills have a blue streak in them. Sometimes they got a lot of orange on the bellies. So if you can catch a couple bluegills, like take some earthworms out there and pitch a bobber and an earthworm underneath like an overhanging tree with some shade, catch you a bluegill, look at the color of it, and try to match and mix up a skirt color to match that bluegill. Not that matching the hatch is a real big deal for me, because I don't think it is, but this is one situation where it does help a little bit, you know, with the bluegill, you know, pattern skirts on the bladed jigs. Okay, so anyway, guys, just give it a try. It's just another technique to add to your arsenal. June and July are probably the best 2 months for it. It starts to fade out a little bit in August and September, and then it picks up again like in late October and November. But for June and July, guys, if you want to fish shallow, it's a good way to catch them. So hope it helps. We'll talk later.